Jose Pere, welcome to the podcast.
Here, thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
It's great to see you again. So, New Planet, you guys are gamifying environmental action. Tell the audience what that means.
Absolutely. So, New Planet, we're gamifying environmental action. And what we did is really create a system that brings together conservation organizations, businesses, and people in a manner that generates environmental and financial profit for all actors involved. Eh, Currently, there is no hub that brings together these actors, conservation organizations, businesses, and people. And the opportunity to engage people with environmental action is really huge. In the US alone, there's 100 million millennials and Gen Z that consider climate a top priority. Not only that, but 40 million are already acting on it. But where do they go? What do they have to do in order for them to engage with environmental action? There is no hub. And so we created New Planet, an environmental mileage program to engage people, to get them to walk the talk. And so what we did is create a system where our partner organizations, they can include activities in our app, such as coral restoration, beach cleanups, mangrove restoration. Those are the activities we're focusing on at first. And because we're based in Miami, we're very focused on our oceans, on our coastline. And what users can do is download the app and they can join those initiatives in the app. Once they join those initiatives and participate, we will get confirmation from our partner organization saying, hey, John was there, Jack was not, Mary was there, and whomever was not. And when we get that confirmation, then we would issue points to that individual that participated. And those points we call bubbles. And as people start accumulating those bubbles, just as in a mileage program, but instead of the gold status and the platinum status, people would reach a planet steward and a planet champion status. And once they reach those statuses, what that's going to do, that's going to unlock discounts or special deals with our partner businesses, the reward providers. Our partner businesses, they can range from retailers to hospitality establishments. Think of hotels, restaurants, bars. Those are the first ones that are interested in their beaches, in their cities, in their oceans being healthy, being clean, because that's the first thing that's going to attract more people to their establishments. So this is a fantastic way for them to showcase their commitment to the environment without them having to be a sustainable brand, let's say, or they don't have to be a brand or a business that sells sustainable products. Not every business has an opportunity to do that. It's difficult. And so this way, again, it's a great way to showcase their commitment and help foster more environmental action that will help their local ecosystems and their local environment. And so that's what New Planet is in a nutshell. We just released our MVP in the past 6 weeks. We've been testing it with our initial partners organizations here in Miami. We've been very excited about the reception we've had from the different conservation organizations. It's been really humbling and really incredible to hear how they love the system, how some of them have heard or have thought about something like New Planet, and it was about time for something like this to come along. Now, we are aware that we are on our early stages, but we're very eager and very optimistic about next year rolling the product out to market, making some additional improvements to different features that we want to have in New Planet. But yeah, it's been a fantastic year so far since the inception of New Planet. And now getting it to market. We're trying to gamify environmental action. So again, that we can engage, especially the younger generations with the environment, because that connection to the environment and that connection to like-minded people that they can encounter in any of these activities in our app, it can prove to be very healthy and very positive, not only for the planet, but also for themselves, especially in times where people are so isolated. Younger generations, each of them are so far apart doing whatever it is they're doing, each of them by themselves. And so we also like to describe New Planet. And I think this is a description that doesn't make justice to the vision that we have, but it is one that helps understanding what we're trying to do. And it's in a way an environmental meetup meets Groupon. So we're bringing people together in person, physically in person, in beach cleanups, coral restoration, mangrove restoration, whatever it might be. And who knows the kind of relationships that can arise from that as well. New friendships, new whatever it might be. And just being out there in nature for an hour or two, I've had the opportunity to participate in more than 10 cleanups throughout this year. And I didn't think that at first, but whenever you go out there, and especially in the Florida sun and the Florida heat, it gets, I mean, you get tired. You have a good sweat out there. And so it's a good exercise. Uh, and so it is a system really that incentivizes action, enhances impact, and it promotes wellness to users, individuals in times where isolation and climate anxiety is really a thing. And I want to try to alleviate that.
Oh, absolutely, man. So many good things that you're doing for people. It touches on so many areas of the society. And I hadn't, when you said a gamify environmental action, I actually hadn't made the connection to the physical component of it. And of course, one of the best ways to deal with anxiety is to take action. And so I think it really will be a big help to people. So let's talk the business side of this just a touch, recognizing you guys are early stage. I know that you're trying to go out into the market. Tell the audience about your upcoming fundraise and what you guys are trying to do. What are you going to use the finances for in terms of growing the business?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So just going back a little bit, this year we started New Planets January of 2023. I can't believe we're already in November of 2023. Time flies. But we started New Planet earlier this year and we've come a long way. We were fortunate, we were chosen to participate in two accelerator programs. One, the Clean Tech Open, which is the leading clean tech accelerator in the world, the largest one, based in California, which we just graduated from that one last week, where we participated. We were part of the Verge 23 Climate Tech Conference in San Jose, California. We had the opportunity to showcase New Planet to more than 5,000 attendees. And we were also a part of the Built in Miami Startup Program, which is a program sponsored by Adventure Miami and the city of Miami. And so again, we learned so much. We were able to do so much. Those two accelerator programs, and now, like you mentioned, we are going to market. We are taking this product to market. We engaged in more than 50 customer interviews, ranging from conservation organizations, businesses, and different people that could end up being the end users of our. And like everybody mentioned, we had amazing feedback. And also, all this year, what it helped us is to define the business model because it's not a simple one. It's not like we're selling, I don't know, we're not selling cars. And so we devised a new system. And this was actually one of the biggest challenges that we had to explain that New Planet was a for profit business. But New Planet being a for profit business is what we believe is going to allow it to be self sustainable. And it's going to be this little engine in the middle of the system driving this forward and fostering more environmental action. Now, when it comes to our business model, we have identified three main revenue streams. Now, the first revenue stream that we're going out to market is, if you remember, every time a person accumulates bubbles, which are points, and they achieve a different status, they unlock these discounts. And whenever they transact with one of our partner businesses, we get a commission on the dollar amount in that transaction. That's our first revenue stream. And that's where the Groupon description kicks in. So that's the first revenue stream, from where businesses can have free advertising within our system to a community of like-minded individuals that want the planet to do better, that want the environment to do. And so whenever someone transacts, we get a commission. Now, this is the first revenue stream that we've anticipated, but we also are in the works to introduce another one, and we want to sell voluntary carbon credits to people and make them accessible to everyone. But why didn't we start with that? I remember when we first started thinking about New Planet, we wanted to sell carbon credits. But first of all, what is a carbon credit? the vast majority of people, I don't think, knows what a carbon credit is. And it's okay, it's fine. But in order for us to have mass adoption and for us to have really large scale impact, people need to understand what they're engaging with. And so we developed this system so that we can start with the simplest actions and simplest, most tangible actions. When you go out, you pick up a plastic from the beach, and hey, you know what? The beach is cleaner now. You can see that, you can feel that. A carbon credit is a little bit less tangible, but it is also a great way to do good for the planet. And so that's going to be a next revenue stream that we're going to introduce, but we want to introduce it in the most simple, seamless way possible. I don't know if you've used any carbon footprint calculators, but in order for you to get an estimate of where your footprint is, you have to spend at least 20, 30 minutes in a footprint calculator inputting, hey, have you flown more than 4 flights this past year? Longer than 4 hours? How many flights shorter than 4 hours? What type of car do you drive? What type of energy do you use? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end, you get this estimate saying, hey, okay, your footprint is X. In order for you to offset it, you need to pay $25 a month. That's another Netflix. That's another Hulu. That's another, I mean, it's an important part of the budget. And so what we devised was, hey, we need to make this simple. And how do we reward people still for footprint offsets? And so what we are going to introduce is offset subscriptions where people can purchase a subscription with us. They're only going to need 3 inputs, zip code, and 2 other questions for us to give a very overarching estimate. I don't think that people need accuracy. They don't need to know that their footprint is 20.24567 tons of CO2 or equivalent. No, it's okay. It's 20 and that's it. And so we want to make it simple, and are going to be able to offset either 25, 50, 75, or 100% of their footprint accordingly. And we're going to issue bubbles as well for their footprints, but we're going to issue bubbles based on percentage amount of offset that people offset, because we don't want to tie the bubble to a specific dollar amount that then drives people away from direct action specifically. Okay. But when it comes to carbon credits, there could be so many ways to engage students also to compete against each other. I went to I went to Penn State University, and I'm never going to forget. I grew up in Ecuador in South America, and so in Ecuador, South America, everything was about soccer. Everything was about soccer. But when I got to Penn State, football was everything. And the football team was every single Saturday, the crowd, the environment, it was huge. And I remember they had these blood drives every single game, especially the games where we had to play against Ohio State or against Michigan. And you had this blood drive, and let's see what university donates more. Now imagine the same thing, but for carbon offset. Let's say we have this big whiteout, Penn State against Ohio State. Instead of a blood drive, we have a carbon drive, if you want to call it that way. What university or what student body offsets the most amount of tons of CO2 from this game? The game, I don't know the exact number of how much tons of CO2 equivalent a game of those can emit, but it's a great way to get them involved and to get them to compete against each other. So that's another revenue stream, and that's another avenue, let's say, to capture additional people that we anticipate having. And then last but not least, what we want to develop is also a subscription for businesses where just like, the Monday.com, Asana, businesses can create their team profile or their business profile, and they can invite their employees to their team profile with a new planet. Now, what is that going to do? Nowadays, there's a lot of requirements for business employees to volunteer 8 hours a year, to volunteer X amount of hours a year, not only for business, but also for students in certain degrees or in certain universities. But in the case of businesses, for their employees, this can also be a great way to engage them and to motivate them to do more. Why? Because the business can showcase commitment. Hey, we're doing something good for the environment. And for example, when you invite the 10 employees, I'm making this up, that you have it in your business, and the employees can have access to the different environmental initiatives that we have within our system. And employees can go participate, they can earn bubbles, they have the incentive for unlocking rewards with whatever store, whatever retailer, whatever hospitality establishment. And then not only that, but at the end of the year, we can give that business an impact report saying, your 10 employees participated in X number of events and they have generated Y number of bubbles. Now, this number of bubbles as of today is directly correlated to the number of hours put into volunteer work. And so they can have a very easy way for them to showcase, hey, you know what? My employees, they volunteered 200 hours this past year. And this 200 hours went into mangrove restoration or beach cleanups or coral restoration or whatever that might be. And so for the business, it's also a good way to, again, showcase commitment to the environment, motivate their employees, because nowadays that's a big thing. I mean, especially for the younger folks, business that they work for, the type of job opportunities that they look for, they need to be aligned with their interests and with whatever it is that they think should be done. Nowadays, we know ESG and we know environment is a top priority. And so this can help attract talent and retain that talent. And again, keep them motivated. I think happy employees mean better performance and better efficiencies within the system. And so I made this a little bit long, but those are the three revenue streams that we anticipate having: commissions from partner businesses, footprint offsets. So we're selling a voluntary carbon credit to individuals, and business subscriptions where they can have the ability to track what their employees have been doing in terms of volunteering and showcase their commitment to our planet, to our environment.
Very cool, Jose. That was a great description of all the revenue streams. Of course, with these kind of apps, the name of the game is always virality. How are you going to get it out there in critical mass to reach enough people? Of course, it'd be interesting if, for example, I refer you and then maybe I get a benefit in terms of more bubbles for activities of my referrals. That can be a virality sort of incentive. And then, of course, the ease to post on social media networks like Facebook, Instagram, those kind of places. Is that something you're building into the system?
We are. And that's actually a great question. As of today, anyone that downloads the app gets 15,000 bubbles for registration. It's a way to get people onboarding. And we do want to get that feature. We don't have it right now. For example, if you invite someone else, we don't have that feature now that you can receive additional bubbles. So how are we going to get this to market? I mean, that's a great question. And like you said, this is all about virality. Now, when I first started looking at numbers of people volunteering in Florida, I thought it was very interesting to see that there's approximately 480,000 people in Florida, according to a Medicorps, that formally volunteer with environmental initiatives. And so there's already a large group of people that are engaged in these initiatives. And that's why we strategically said, hey, let's reach out to the conservation organizations. Let's create relationships with them so that whenever we get this to market, we are there with them, participating in their events, in their beach cleanups, in their whatever it might be. So that the people that participate in those can get to be our first users, let's say. And so what we're doing right now, we have a calendar of events towards the end of the year. We anticipate participating in 30 additional events until December 31st. And we're going to have very simple, very wooden stone. But a QR code, people can go, they can download the app. Because at the end of the day, we're not asking anything of them, right? I mean, they're already there. I mean, and we're saying for whatever it is you're doing, they're rewarding. Just download the app and join the event. So that's where we're going to start. And so we have started getting this to market. But we completely understand and acknowledge that our next immediate course of action is tapping into colleges and universities in Florida. There's 1.5 million students here in Florida. And when we look at the top 20 universities in terms of student enrollment, eh, they hold 50% of all of the students. So, for example, University of Florida, UCF, University of Miami, FIU, among others, in total, they have 750,000 students. And how do we tap into those? With an aggressive social media and online presence. And in order to do that, we're raising a pre-seed round that you mentioned before. We're actually currently raising $300,000 in the pre-seed stage. And those funds will be the vast majority of it allocated towards marketing. We know this is going to be a game of numbers and a game of really putting the planet in front of people's eyes. The more we're able to do that, the better we'll be able to do. And also the development of new features, because the product that we have right now in the market, yes, it's a fantastic product, but it is not the complete and full product that we intend to have. Because, for example, I mean, the additional features that I mentioned to you, the business subscriptions, the footprint offsets, we also want to implement automatic check-in and check-out for organizations. That's a big pain. It's a big pain that we learned that organizations have is their lack of ability to keep track of who volunteers with them and the amount of hours put in into their actions, whatever those actions might be. Because at the end of the year, that information for them is extremely important when they have to go and apply for a grant. Right? Okay, what are your numbers? I mean, what have you been able to do? What impact have you been able to have? And right now, it's been crazy to look, but they use a pen and paper. I mean, they check in people with pen and paper. And so what we want to implement that we're working on right now is really a feature where, yes, people join the event in our app. Whenever they get to that event at the time where the event starts, they get checked in via geolocation. And whenever they finish the cleanup or the restoration, whatever it is, they go out, they scan a QR code, and that's where bubbles would be issued on the spot. And so that is going to be, again, incredible feature value add for organizations. So a big portion, the 300,000 that we're looking for in a pre-seed stage is going to be allocated to the development really of this additional features. And then the remainder will go to operations, administrative, and expanding the team. Because at the end of the day, the one thing I would love to have is more time, but I don't have more time. And I realized that. And so I need a team to help me really take this to market the way that we intend to.
No, for sure. That's absolutely right. Who's writing the code? That's always the question that we hear in these kind of early stage startups. Is that one of your partners? Is it you? How's the code getting written?
So the code, what we did is we outsourced the development of the app to a development company in Brazil. I built it. They've done an amazing work with it. We anticipate we already have really a roadmap of the next developments, the next features, everything that we want to implement based on all of the acquired knowledge we've been able to have from the past 4, 5, 6 months of interviewing and talking with the different customers, etc. But yeah, that's how we did it. Our plan is to continue with that in that direction, keep using them. They've done an amazing job. And not only that, but they've done incredible works also for Petrobras in Brazil to put a little robot to analyze leaks in pipelines in the Pere Basin. And so we're very confident, let's say, in their work. We like their work so far. And they're ready to go. They're ready to go. They're waiting for green lights. We need our green light, meaning cash, to give them the green lights so that we can start working on that. But those are the ones developing right now. The code.
Got it. So you can certainly decline to answer this question if you want, but I'm having Shark Tank flashbacks, and the fact that you're kind of sitting in bubbles underwater makes me think of that as well. Of course, on Shark Tank, they always say, okay, so for my 300,000, what percentage of the company am I going to get? Have you guys set your pre-money valuation at this time, or are you waiting for investor feedback?
We are waiting for investor feedback. Now, our initial idea is considering that we are very early stage and it's very hard to put a valuation to the company. I mean, yes, if we have to, we will go out and evaluate it. So what we I mean, our ideal scenario would be to be able to raise funds in a to a discounted sale and no valuation cap, putting there a 25% discount and moving forward with that. Now, if we're pushed, let's say, to evaluate the company, then that is something that we're going to do. But again, if we can avoid doing that at this early stages, then that is something we would like to avoid.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. You might get some pushback on the valuation cap, but I'll leave that up to the investor. But
Absolutely. And that's also why we are considering equity crowdfunding. Equity crowdfunding for specific, I would say, especially for something like New Planet can be something very interesting. It's a consumer product and equity crowdfunding, whatever we raise from there. I mean, still, we would be looking for angels, right, to contribute to the crowdfunding round. But considering that this is such a business based on community, on our local community, I think it would be a great way to get people involved and get people on board with the mission and with the business itself. And so that's also something that's roaming around their minds right now to see whether we start an equity crowdfunding round concurrently with this, like the round that would be the 300 raise.
no, that totally makes sense. And I'll give a shout out to one of our former podcast guests here on Energy Superheroes, a guy by the name of Teague Egan, who's the founder of Energy.X. They do a lithium mining business down in South America, actually. And they did a lot of their early stage funding and crowdfunding. He was on the podcast maybe 2 years ago. They recently closed a $50 million round where General Motors participated in a deal, and they're continuing to make it available via crowdfunding. So that was a success story of sort of a direct to consumer offering that was very successful. And now they're in their Series B and had some big strategic participation. So cool thing about him is he's based in Fort Lauderdale. You might want to hit him up for some ideas around crowdfunding.
That would be great. Absolutely. You can help me make that introduction. I would love to meet him. Because yeah, I mean, I've been exposed to crowdfunding in the past 3, 4 years. And to me, the biggest value that gives founders is that they can keep control. And not only that, but they can also activate their community. Now, again, not every business or company or product is appealing to crowdfunding. But in the case of New Planet, I'm very sure that it is. Of course, it has to be done in the best way possible. But yeah, it's an avenue that we're considering heavily moving forward with.
For sure. Yeah. A company like yours that's appealing, that's makes sense, especially to your target audience, that's a younger demographic, comfortable making investments through the internet. I think it certainly could work. Another Energy Superheroes guest I'll give a shout out to is Ali Jamal. He was on the podcast and he's involved heavily on Angel List and has done very well, particularly with sort of direct to consumer businesses. And so I'll make that introduction as well.
That would be great. That would be great. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, we got to get our Energy Superheroes network going on, off of the podcast. We've had it where I think you're going to be like episode 65. So we've progressed pretty nicely in terms of having some good guests on.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, lucky number 65.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about your background a little bit. So a couple cool touch points. I just got married. My wife's from Ecuador as well. She's from Cuenca, and I know you're from Quito. Another touch point, my business partner went to Penn State. So we've got those connections there, which I think is super cool. But tell me what it was like in terms of your environmental mindset growing up in Ecuador.
It was non-existent in a way. Why I say that? Because no, I mean, growing up in Ecuador, I grew up my family's from Guayaquil, which is the second largest city of the country, but I grew up in Quito. And in Quito, I was in the middle of the Andes. And so every single weekend, I remember we could even go and buy some ice cream on horseback. No cars, no nothing. We could just walk, I don't know, 2 miles, get some ice cream, go back. And there were this old train rail that went through the middle of the Andes. And I remember going through those in ATV or in horseback, and you would just see this nature there everywhere. And so to me, being close to nature, being exposed to nature has always been a very important part of who I am. Now, growing up in Quito, in Ecuador, Ecuador is an oil and gas country. Ecuador depends on petroleum. Our main export is petroleum. And so I studied petroleum and natural gas engineering. That's my degree in Penn State. And when I started my petroleum and natural gas engineering, I also worked in a project in the region of Saruma, Portobelo, in the province of El Oro in Ecuador. And I was exposed to really, it was incredible to see, to be honest. But it was this tailings management project in the Saruma, Portobelo region where we had this artisanal miners. There was this American company that used to manage that whole mine. Now they went out of the country, they were kicked out of the country, I believe in the 80s. And so people from the region that were miners, they had to live, they had to eat. So they went into the mines and started mining themselves. But of course, they didn't do the right studies. Right now, the mines for the holes are being made anywhere without any structural study to see if the mine will be able to hold another mine there. And not only that, but whenever they had to dispose of the tailings, what do? They throw them into the river. That river has no life. That river gets all the way to northern Peru, to one of the cities that has one of the largest or highest, I'm sorry, index of children being born with whatever type of deficiency. Eh, And so I've always been a fan of energy. I've always been a fan of the energy sector, but I've always had in my mind what is it that we can do in order to help our planet? Because there's always this one extreme that says oil and gas is terrible, it's the worst. I'm one of the persons that thinks that we can't just expect to flip a switch and then work out of renewables for tomorrow. No, we need to transition responsibly, but we need to transition. And so having this oil and gas background, having the love for the planet, for having grown up in Ecuador. eh, I also, for an oil and gas company I used to work for in Brazil, we designed this innovation vehicle called Great Future, where I put together my professors from Penn State, which was really amazing, together with some of the engineers, this oil and gas company, to try and find new ways, right? And even if it would be within the same oil and gas operations, how can we do that in a more efficient and a cleaner way? And there was a chance to foster new technologies that can substitute in any way or form whatever we're doing right now, then perfect. But again, it's all about in my opinion, collaboration. And so having been able to put them together, I think it was a great thing. But I've always had this in my mind. I want to do something. I want to start something for the better of our planet. In living in Miami, I'm a scuba diver. I love scuba diving. I've been doing so for the past 10 years. Yes, 10 years. And it's incredible. It's incredible whenever you're down there. It's literally breathtaking. It's a moment of peace that has no description rate. And when I started hearing the state of the coral reefs here in Florida, it's so sad to hear that less than 5% of our regional reefs remain. It's really sad. And so, okay, what is it that we can do? What is it that, how is that we can engage people to environmental action? So that's why we designed this system. And that's actually, bubbles actually come from scuba diving. Whenever you're scuba diving and you're disoriented down there, you get lost, let's say. What do they tell you? Follow the bubbles and you go back up, you'll be okay. We will breathe again. So in our sense, and it was very, very interesting. I'm not sure if you're a Jimmy Buffett fan, but he just released a song called Bubbles Up in the past couple of weeks. And he talks about basically this. So it's crazy that they released that song after his death, rest in peace, Jimmy Buffett, but it really applies in a way to what we're trying to do is, hey, go out there, participate in beach cleanups, do some coral restoration, earn some bubbles, follow the bubbles, and we'll be okay. That's a little bit of my background. Um, I love the ocean. I love nature. And so I've always wanted to do something. And having this experience in mining, in oil and gas, I see the need for it. But I think it is the most important thing is for people to really understand what the issue is. Because when people start fighting, let's say against oil and gas, it's okay. But why? There needs to be a reason. There needs to be a logic behind whatever it is we're doing. And I think that the majority of younger folks don't give ourselves the time to really understand the things or the intricacies behind any decision that we make. Because again, and every decision, especially when it comes to energy, it has to be taken very diligently. It has to be taken very seriously into account in the most responsible way possible.
Jose, that's an amazing origin story. That's for sure. And I'll say being married to an Ecuadorian, I understand people from Ecuador, for the most part, are very heart centered people. And I think ultimately overcome the challenge of energy transition, we have to use our brains and we also have to use our hearts because it's a challenge that's bigger than just pure economics. And so I think it's amazing that you do have that heart centered approach to creating this business because, and also I think it's amazing that you have an engineering background because investors love engineers because they tend to be good at executing. So I think that's, you've got both the heart and the brain. I think that's awesome. As we get close to wrapping up here, tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, whether they're investors or people that just want to maybe download the app and use it to start making a difference.
Absolutely. So anyone can reach out to me at Jose, Jose, at newplanet.earth, and that is NIU planet.earth. You would also visit our website, niuplanet.earth, and you can download our app there. We have links to both the app and the Apple Store and in Google Play. And again, I'm always happy to talk. I'm always happy to chat. So anyone, please don't hesitate to reach out and I'll be available.
This has been Jose Pere with New Planet. Thanks for being on, Jose.
Thank you so much for your time today, Peter. It was an honor.